What's up, guys? Welcome to our YouTube. Well, I f***ed that up. Dang it. What's up, guys? Welcome to our YouTube channel, or welcome back to our YouTube channel. My name is Taylor.
And I'm Jeff.
You can see I have holes. I'm just gonna call it out now. I have holes in these pants, but you know how you just have a favorite pair of pants, and it just doesn't matter what. Like, I will wear these. I could say until they have holes in them, but that's not gonna stop me. I'm gonna keep wearing them. Unless I'm sitting like this, no one will know.
I also have the same pair of pants, and you wear mine.
I love these pants.
Yeah, they're great pants. They're really great pants.
I would buy 100 of them. I can't find any more.
No, they don't exist.
I do have a story that I think would be cool to share that I've never shared on social media, really, or with hardly anybody, that I think is a cool story.
Okay, I'm kind of nervous.
So the story is about how I knew that I wanted to marry Jeff.
Oh.
And this story is something, and we always want to bring stories to these kind of podcasts too, because I feel like we're just kind of setting down and hanging out, and these are things that you would share with your friends anyways. So a lot of people ask, like, how did you know you wanted to marry him, and all these different things. And like we uncovered in our last sit down video, is that, you know, we met in high school, we were best friends. I already loved him from like a friendship perspective, and like as a person. Obviously we were very young, so you don't know who you want to marry when you're 16 years old, or you don't even understand that concept. And we waited 5 years to get engaged and 6 years to get married. So we ended up getting married when we were around 22, 23. That was still very young, but obviously we were 6 years. Do you remember, because I think you know the story I'm going to tell, but do you remember how old we were during this time?
Oh.
Were we in college still?
Yeah.
So we were around college age, right? In college, around college. We both grew up in Oklahoma. And if you know Oklahoma, you know there's tornadoes. So
Tornado Alley.
Tornado Alley. So this story also involves how we almost got hit by a tornado, like as we were driving home. So this is where this story is going. How it all started is we were visiting my parents, but at this time, I don't remember there being any chance of storms.
No.
And
not that I remember. It was a long time ago, but
yeah, it's been a while. I mean, this was almost 10 years ago. We were driving home, and a thunderstorm was coming, and we were in the actual part that would always get hit by tornadoes. We literally were driving down the highway in Tornado Valley. My parents start, calling me, texting me saying, hey, there's tornadoes popping up everywhere. Like, make sure you guys are being safe. Let us know when you make it home. And it was raining so hard, and I think it was hailing and all these things, to the point where we had to pull over. And it could have been like pull over and we're just waiting to get hit by the tornado, but we literally could not see right in front of us where we were driving. And finally it kind of started calming up, which is almost like
good
worse.
And bad.
It's good and bad, because it's when it starts to get more calm, you can see, so you can finish driving home. However, it could be the eye of the storm, and that's where the tornado actually starts coming down. So anyways, of course you can imagine the anxiety that we're having, the thoughts that are going through our head at any minute. Like, we could be hit by a tornado. What do we do? Taught at a young age, like, okay, you need to get out of your car, you need to go into a ditch and take cover there. And I was not about to do that, instead of just stay in your car. But you got to think all the things that are racing through your head. It calms down. We drive home. We make it to the house. And we immediately, like, as soon as we're parking, we're jumping out of the truck and we are going right into the storm shelter. Cellars, whatever you want to call them. They're in the ground, and they're usually not clean. And they're usually filled with like snakes and spiders and all those. Like, yes, they are.
They're not filled with snakes.
Okay, they're not filled with them, but there's a good potential chance.
So the difference between a storm shelter and a cellar, like specifically, a cellar is, storm shelters a lot of times are built in homes, and a cellar a lot of times are built outside of homes. So you have to exit your home, go a distance from your house, maybe 15, 20 yards, and there's this concrete bunker pretty much built into a ground with a staircase going down with a door, right? You've probably seen some of those in like the tornado videos. But yeah, so a cellar isn't, it's not part of your home. So like, you're very rarely in there unless there's something going on. A lot of times people store stuff in there, like cans, things like that, like especially where we're from. So it's more of like storage, and then in emergency situations, you have somewhere to go if you need it. So there's not snakes and things like that always. And like, there's definitely spiders because it's a, underground shelter, but it's not like just filled with snakes.
I guess I shouldn't have said it that way.
Movie.
I just, in my mind, it's filled
that's
with,
what you think.
Okay, that's how
think. You view it.
And so, because there's a chance, so there's a snake in there because it's in the middle of the ground, right? And it's and they're not like these nice places that you go that's like safe. It's like okay, do I want to risk, a tornado, or do I want to go in the cellar? So if you go in the cellar, that means it's serious. And so we go in the cellar, and I'm freaking out. I'm worried that, that like, okay, if this tornado doesn't get me, there's going to be a snake that gets me, or spiders. There's going to be something, right? Like, I'm just not having it. I'm a worrier anyways, obviously. Jeff's the more easygoing one out of the two of us. I'm the worrywart. I mean, I think I'm on the verge of tears at this point. And we finally get in, we shut the door, and we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if we're going to, like, the car's going to be blown over, a tree's going to fall on top of us. Like, we don't know what's going to happen at this point. And Jeff can recognize, because Jeff was, obviously like just trying to protect and trying to figure out to do something, make sure we're safe. But he recognizes how scared that I was in this moment, and how I was like on the verge of tears, didn't know what was going to happen. And so he immediately, without thinking, without question, he pulls out his phone, and he starts playing music. And he starts playing some country music. He starts singing. He starts laughing and dancing. And in my mind, I was like, what's wrong with him? He's crazy. He's crazy. And then he started having me dance and sing to the songs. And I started realizing that he's trying to make me feel as safe and comfortable, and make me smile and make me laugh during this horrible moment. And even though we didn't know what was going to happen, I knew in that moment that no matter how scared I was, no matter how uncertain the situation was, no matter what the situation, I knew that he could always make me smile. He could always make me feel safe, and he could always make the situation the best it possibly could be. That would, obviously relate to any situation that life would ever throw at us, because that's just one example of everything that couples face, that people face on a day-to-day basis. Life is going to constantly throw things at you that make you feel uncertain, that make you feel scared, that make you feel like you don't know what's going to happen. But knowing that you have someone there that will make you laugh and make you smile, that will make you feel safe, that will make you feel not alone, that will make you feel like no matter what happens, we'll figure it out and we'll be okay.
Yeah.
And I just remember looking at him and thinking, I have to marry him, because like, what more could I ask for? I felt happy, and I didn't even care what was going to happen. I think that's a pretty cool story.
Yeah. I love that story. I think I just did what I felt was right. I felt it was the right thing to do. Like, yeah, I was nervous and scared too. I had no idea what was going to happen, but I definitely didn't want, you to be afraid, you to be scared, because I felt like we were going to be safe. I love that story because, and what it makes me think of is my mom loves Marilyn Monroe. And I believe it's Marilyn Monroe that says, if you can make a girl laugh, you can make her do anything. I don't know. I love to make people laugh, and music has always been something that relieves my stress and, helps with anxiety. And it's always something. It's something that like, if you put a good song on, like, it just makes you feel good, right? Everyone in the room. So I was like, well, let's just listen to some music. Let's play some music. Let's relax, because like it's out of our control, right? We've done everything we can to be safe. So now, like, let's just take our minds off of it. It reminds me how old we're getting. Because that was a long time ago, but it reminds me much about how much we've been through. You know, there's so many stories that we're going to be able to share. I'm really excited.
She's just staring at
she's so cute. A lesson that we've learned is like that it doesn't matter who you are. You have the ability to help people with your story. Mm-hmm. Like, we are just normal, average, Oklahoma kids. Yeah. And when you tell a story, when you share struggles and experiences that you've gone through, people relate to them. Even if they're not exactly the same, they relate to the struggle. And that's the key of, like, it doesn't matter who you are. Share your story. Talk about what you've gone through. Talk about how you got through it. And you have no idea who that might be impacting. You have no idea who that might be influencing to make a better decision, or to, just keep going, to wake up one more day. I did have a question that I kind of wanted to, I love asking questions. Like, we always talk about this. I love the deep talks, and I like picking your brain. Your viewpoint on things is not always different, but you always have a different perspective on things that I love to hear. Like, what are a couple lessons that you wish that younger Taylor would have known, or something that you maybe wish you could have learned earlier?
Whether you're 16 or you're 30 or you're 40 or 100, I think this is an important lesson to know, that everyone will figure out at some point in their life hopefully, and it's immediately the first thing that came to my mind because, and it could be something that I personally struggle with. I feel that you don't struggle with it as much. I feel like you're very interestingly wise for your age and just in life.
I'm an old soul.
You are, yes, you're definitely an old soul. Something that I wish that I could go back and tell myself is most things aren't as big of a deal as you make them to be.
Ooh.
Truly wish that I understood this concept sooner. And unfortunately, I think what helped me come to realize this is things that are actually terrible.
Yeah.
When things that are actually terrible happen to you, it makes you realize that the things that you thought were a big deal just simply aren't. And it's not to take away the validation of the feeling that you have in that moment, but the amount of stress, the amount of frustration, the amount of worry that I have dealt with over things that truly didn't matter or the things that turned out to not even be a big deal. I really, I can't say regret because I think it's all a lesson,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But I'm so happy that I figured that out at 28 instead of further down the road in my life, because there's been so many times where I get so worked up and it derails my day. It emotionally drains me. It blunts my productivity in order to become the best version of myself or really make a true impact on other people, because I'm so fixated or worried or stressed out or overwhelmed over things that just simply don't matter or that aren't as big of a deal as you think. And I know that that's very broad, but what I'm telling you, whatever it is you're so worried about in this moment, it probably isn't something that will matter in 6 months.
I mean, I love that. Obviously, that's as soon as you said it, I was like, wow. You can't regret things, but also everything that happens is I truly believe everything that happens is leading you to learn something. I think that would be how I would kind of like share a piece of what that would be for me. And along, your same point is don't overthink things, but make sure you're paying enough attention to what's happening to learn from it.
Yep.
Because just where I was very opposite early is I was just very go with the flow. So I just kind of like was whatever happens.
Almost too careless.
Right. Because what happens there is if then you don't pay attention enough to learn from the mistakes, you just repeat the mistakes, right? And if you continue to repeat the mistakes, you don't make progress. So the things that you worry about, you worry because you care.
Right.
Right. And if you care, that's important to you. So if it's important to you, you need to pay attention to it. But don't get stuck on worrying about it. Focus on what you can control. And what you can control is how you react. And if you understand how you react and you can control how you react and you can react in a manner that's not going to cause you to overwhelm yourself or overextend yourself, you're going to be able to address the situation. Okay, this happened. It's unfortunate that it happened. However, what do I do next to prevent this from happening again and to make the most of the current situation? And if you look at it from that perspective, it really changes how you view things. And there's a really great analogy that I kind of came up with because I had an experience in work where this is something that happened to me, where I overanalyzed something so much that was terrifying that instead of taking action on correcting it, I continued to think about it. And the way I look at this is fear is, I imagine fear is this monster, right? And when it originates, it's very small and powerless. But the more that you think about it, the bigger that it gets, the more power that it holds in your mind. And the more that it grows, it's like a shadow, right? So it gets this big, massive, scary thing where you have anxiety, your heart's racing, you're thinking about it, you can't go to sleep because it's always in your mind and in your head and on your mind. And then when you finally face it and embrace it and take the task on head on, you realize that it really wasn't ever scary. It was always just this small roadblock, this small obstacle, but you gave it so much power because you put so much worry into it, so much energy into worrying about what would happen, that you made it powerful, right? So if you don't give it the energy, you don't give it the power, it's so much easier to overcome. You just, that I think about the buffalo into the storm, right? You just face it head on, you run into the storm. When things worry you, take action on it immediately, don't allow it to grow with your worry and the energy that you continuously give it. Literally, like I wrote a post about this 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, because of a current a situation that happened then, that I let this go on for months, and then all of a sudden I overcame this thing. And I was like, wow, that was so easy. That was so simple. And I lost weight because of this.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much power you can give something.
Right.
And like that's what I mean by you're in control, right? Because if you're giving it all this energy, then you're in control of it becoming more powerful over you.
What you'll realize after this conversation is that we're very similar in a lot of ways, but we're very opposite in a lot of ways. So just like the story of the tornado, and just like in this situation where I've lived my life just stressing myself out over every little thing. And you're right, it's because I care. And where you have really been almost exactly on the opposite end, where you're like, nothing's a big deal, to where it hinders your progress because you're not focusing on what you can learn and how you can get better from those situations. And either way, it's one thing to realize it, and it's another thing to overcorrect. So if I were to overcorrect, and like if someone were to come to this realization like, oh, nothing's a big deal. Right. And then it's a dichotomy, right? Mm-hmm. If you overcorrect and you think, oh, nothing's a big deal, and then you're exactly right, where you're not learning the lessons and you're not realizing like, hey, it's okay to care about things. I just can't let it destroy me and destroy my progress and destroy my emotional energy and destroy my focus and my happiness, right? Because if that's where I let it get to, is I would let so many things build up. Like you said, everything was so fear-based. And in your situation, if you were to overcorrect and you were to say, I need to care more, and then you start to overanalyze everything just like you did, and it hindered your progress. Mm-hmm. Both of those situations, you're going to blunt yourself from really being able to move forward. So what's really powerful about our relationship that I'm very thankful for is that we are so similar that we can understand, but we're so different that we really help each other grow and balance each other out and help us see things from a new perspective. Just right. Like you asked, whenever you asked the question, you wanted my perspective. Yeah. And that's exactly it. You've taught me, and I've heard, and here's another thing when it comes to whether it be a friendship, a relationship, maybe a family member, or a coworker, we've also been through the situation where we become very frustrated at the other one versus helping them work through it. For example, if I wanted Jeff to care more because he's like, everything's going to be fine. Why even worry about it? We'll figure it out. And then I just want to shake him because I'm like, you have to care more. Why don't you care more? But I know he deeply understands that everything will work out and everything will be okay. So that calmness about him, I admire. But I really wanted to push him to understand that what he was doing wasn't working. So how can he use the situations that weren't ideal to get better, when he would take it as, I'm just being nagging and annoying, and why do I want to always see the worst and everything? And on the other side of that, when I would over worry and I would have all this anxiety and I would just, be really tearing myself apart or just again, draining my energy, all this stuff. And he would try to say like, well, just don't worry about it. Everything's going to be fine. Like, stop. And he would get so frustrated at me because I would be so worried that it would cause him more anxiety and frustration. And so on the other side of that, you would try to help me through it, but we would do it in a way that we were coming from a place of being annoyed. We were coming from a place of frustration versus understanding. And then once I understood, and once we understood how the other one thinks and how we could actually work together to help grow, right, to be a more productive and happy person. Right. Because like for you, for example, and some of that's maturity. Mm-hmm. Some of that's growing up and realizing you have to experience and realizing you have to make progress and like take action and face those fears. Or for me, I realize I go through enough things that it's like, okay, well, that really wasn't a big deal looking back. And I do that time and time again to the point where then I can actually be in a situation and realize it's not the end of the world when I'm in the moment.
Big realization on that for us is where we started to understand each other a little bit more, is when we were introduced to the Enneagram.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to bring up is, whether it be the tornado story or how we used to get so frustrated at our thought process on things.
Yeah.
Understanding the Enneagram helped us really uncover not only ourselves, but each other.
You guys don't know what the Enneagram is. It's like I'm sure that I'm probably going to get some feedback on this because I'm going to mistype what it actually is.
We're also not experts in this,
by
but
no means experts.
We have loved learning about it.
We're Instagram experts. We've learned everything you can find on Instagram and YouTube about it, but that's as far as it goes.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure like how you would professionally talk about what an Enneagram is, but for us, what we understand is like it helps you identify your personality traits. So it's similar to a personality test. I guess you could label it as a personality test, but it's not like the way I always talk about it is it's not just fill out these 10 questions and it talks about what your personality is. Like it's a very in-depth, it's like 144 questions. We paid $12 for the test and it gives you pages of feedback on, and this is where when I first took it, I was introduced to it by Brittany, one of our coworkers, and a great friend. And I took it and I remember where I was at. We were in the apartment and I took the test and I started reading off the results.
And it was like,
and in my
head, probably the first time ever, you felt like
understood 100%.
Well, and I'll say it's not one of these copy and paste tests. How it works is the questions start off very broad, and the further you get into the test, it's like an algorithm thing to where then it makes like I got different questions towards the end of my test than he did because it was trying to challenge me to figure me out on a deeper level, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you're like the questions some of the questions are generated based off previous answers.
Right.
So, but the thing that really stood out to me was, and I know this was the same thing for Taylor too, is like a lot of the personality tests will tell you all these positive things about you, right? Like, oh, you have this skill or this trait, or, people love you because of this. And like, those are good things we love to hear. So like naturally when you read them, like, yeah, that's me. Like I love making people laugh. I'm happy.
Yeah.
But the negatives, right? And I don't want to necessarily label them as negatives because that's not what is the more I've learned about it. That's not what it is. But these are parts of your personality that aren't as beneficial to growth, I think is a good way to put it. And when I read that section, I was like, oh, someone's literally in my head. Like it was so accurate, so spot on to things, because that was that was really part of the first realization where I actually realized that I avoid stress. I will divert stress at all costs possible. And I've been that way my entire life. As long as I can remember the situation of the tornado. Guess what? Instead of stressing about it, what I do, I change my attention to something that's more happy, more positive.
Avoidance, yeah.
Avoidance, right? So that was the first big time where I realized, like, wow, I avoid things. And what that has done for me in the last 3 years is now I understand when I'm feeling those moments of where I want to avoid this, I know that I can, what we talked about earlier, instead of avoiding this scary thing, I can face it. I can go head on into it and realize, because there's a lesson on the other side of it.
Biggest thing here, before I dive too much into the Enneagram specifically, is just the encouragement of trying to truly understand you and yourself, and then the people around you and how you think, what motivates you, what are you most afraid of, like what excites you the most. Because the more you can learn those things, the more you can use them to your advantages. You understand what you avoid, what you naturally gravitate to, where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are. And the more you can be aware of those things and take action on those things, the more you are able to grow as a person, and the better you're able to help those around you and really better your relationships, because it made a huge difference in our communication and understanding one another and understanding ourselves. And it was very, very eye-opening. So it's not that this is the end-all be-all. This is just one thing. And we've used many tools to help learn more about ourselves and how we think. It's easy to just keep going through life and be stubborn and just be stuck in your ways. But that's going to be one of the biggest things that holds you back, is not being aware of how you think naturally and what's holding you back and how could you be communicating better, and how can you understand the other person's needs and wants? And you hear this through the different types of love languages, all different kinds of personality tests and attachment styles and all of these different things that can really contribute to bettering your happiness, your relationships, your communication, and just how you operate as a person. So we're specifically talking about the Enneagram here, but this can go for really anything, and just understanding yourself and your partners and your friends and your coworkers even better, to the point that you can all grow together. Chaos is just not knowing what to do. I don't want people to think the Enneagram specifically is the end all be all, but that was just one of the first starting points that we really started diving into understanding ourselves more.
And I think that if you do want to improve your relationship with your significant other or coworkers or friends, I think those are two great tests that we've used, and obviously not sponsored or anything or affiliated to either one of these by any means, but they're just real resources that we've used that have helped us with communication. And the Enneagram and the love languages. If you can identify your partner's love language, your friend's love languages, like that's going to make you a better friend, a better partner, better spouse, better brother, better family member, whatever. The same thing, understanding Enneagram types, not only your type, but their type. Because like you said, then you understand, when, like with your reactions to stress, right? I understand that what you're looking for is safety and security. It's not necessarily that you just enjoy being stressed. Like you don't like to be stressed. No one likes to be stressed, but I understand to help you relieve that stress. I need to help you, instead of just getting frustrated and saying, why are you so worried about this? Helping you understand that, hey, look, I understand you're worried about this, but look at it from this perspective. This is why it's nothing really big to worry about, because this is still going to be okay because of this. And guiding you through it and helping you understand why it's going to be okay. Not that just reassuring you that I know it's going to be okay.
Right. Because at the end of the day, like what we learned, because we dove into this. So in the Enneagram, there's 9 different personality types. I put 9 and I did 6. 9 personality types. And Jeff is the 7. He's the enthusiast. And I am the 6. I am the loyal skeptic. So what I've learned about myself through, just understanding and researching a lot of this kind of stuff is and it's funny because you look back at different things in your life and you realize like, oh, I did do these things. Oh, I have thought this way, but you just didn't realize that in a couple different ways. Either you thought nobody else understands me and I feel alone, and now I don't feel so alone, or you thought, oh, other people don't worry about this too. Because I used to just get so annoyed at Jeff because I was like, yeah, everybody is like stresses about this. And then I realized that that's just how my brain operates. I really like routine. I don't like to try new foods. I don't like to go to new things. I'm a homebody. And so something that I do where I think of like the worst case scenario on every situation, which drives Jeff crazy. It's almost a way for me to mentally prepare myself, I think, for, okay, what could be the possible worst thing that could possibly happen?
Setting expectations.
Which he always just thought I was negative. But I'm like, no, I don't want these things to happen. I'm just trying to think of that way as a way, I think, to protect myself. Yeah. But also, I'm a big problem solver.
A very good problem solver as well. We have a good connection.
Because you think of all the positive things that can happen.
I think about a lot of the positive, creative, like, all right, this is how we can make this work. Where she's great at identifying the problems of like, all right, these are obstacles that we need to be prepared for. Mm-hmm. So like we can kind of, prepper, exactly. Yeah. And that's what I was going to say too, is like, it's not necessarily that you set low expectations. It's that you understand those are possibilities and you want to be prepared for them so that if they do happen, you understand how to get over them.
Exactly.
Right. And that's what I have to do a better job of helping you understand too, is like, I need to use my skill set to help you figure out how to overcome the problems when you identify them. So you identify them, then together we can solve them better.
Well, and this is just an example. And oh my gosh, I feel like we could just go on a million different tangents about this, but this is just one example of how understanding how you think and how your partner thinks is that, say he does bring me an idea and I immediately in my head, I'm thinking, okay, this could go wrong, this could go wrong, this could go wrong. Instead of, again, just shutting it down, that's where that communication isn't as effective. I make him feel not valued. I make him feel stupid. I make him feel, whatever. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh, I'm being helpful because I'm warning him of all these things. And now we could come up with ways to combat that. But the better way I can approach it, just how we communicate, is I first and foremost need to get excited with him because it is a good idea. And if we can make this happen, and I truly believe like he'll come up with a way to make it happen and make it work, then that's where I can allow myself to be excited, and have fun with it. And then I could talk through, okay, so first, how are we going to get there? And then it helps him think, okay, here's 5 ways we can do it. So then now I'm not completely just shutting it down. And then I can bring, okay, so now what if this happens? How do we overcome that? And then he can immediately think of something positive we can do to overcome it. So by doing it this way, now we are both staying excited. We're both feeling valued. We're both problem solving together and using our strengths of him thinking of only positive things and me thinking of, what could negatively be impacted. But even in our relationships, like this caused so much frustration in everything that we did. And by him understanding that my thought process isn't because I want to be negative. I'm in the woods. I'm freaking out and trying to figure out how to get out because now I've put myself in this situation that has caused this anxiety. And he just needs to come into the woods and say, hey, I get it. I see where you're coming from. I see how that could be a possibility. But here's one thing that we could do, or here's a couple things that we could do to overcome that. And then he's walking me through getting out of the woods. Okay, now we're moving out of the woods. We're moving in the right direction. And I'm feeling more calm. I'm feeling more safe and secure. And it's just a more effective way. And by doing that over and over again, my thought process now becomes, okay, here's what could go wrong, but I know that we'll come up with a way to fix it. By meeting me where I'm at, he's able to help me change my thought process, which helps us grow, again, both individually. So now he knows, okay, I came up with this idea. I know there's going to be obstacles, but I know I can come up with ways to overcome them before, not even just avoiding the obstacles, right. Avoiding anything that could potentially go wrong. Now we're kind of operating at a more efficient standard, not only within ourselves, but within each other. And again, this goes for friendships, this goes for coworkers, this goes for relationships, and even your own personal growth.
Yeah. And I think like if you're in a leadership position, I don't think that you can necessarily make it mandatory to have your peers like take this test. But if you can understand their Enneagram type, like I know it will make you a better leader.
Even if you can just understand what their needs are, because just like the love language thing, say your love language was quality time, which it is. And I know acts of service is high for us too, but say acts of service was the bottom or whatever. And say you were going through something really stressful. And so I was like, okay, Jeff's very stressed out. So what I'll do is I'll get the house clean. I'll get the food prepped. I'll get the yard mowed. I'll figure out, I'll get all these acts of service done so that he doesn't even have to stress anymore about it. And then we do this for a month, and a month goes by. You're not even there for me. Like, I'm going through all this stressed out, and you've spent no time with me. We have spent no quality time together. All you do is you're outside working on the yard, or you're cooking in the kitchen. Like, you're not spending any time with me. Like, and he's frustrated because I'm not meeting his needs. And I'm over here like, I'm killing myself over here. And he hasn't even thanked me. He hasn't even done anything to show that he appreciates all the hard work that I've done.
Yeah.
And that's because, again, it comes back to understanding what that person needs. And maybe what would be more effective is, of course, those things need to get done, but maybe we can do them together and we can spend quality time making the house cleaner, cooking the meals together, and we're laughing. And that's what is more fulfilling to you. So
yeah, that's a great example. I think too, like that just goes back to communicating clearly, like what's important, right? Because that changes too. Like there are certain times where certain things are more important to me than other things. Same thing with that's anybody. Side note of the Enneagram as a whole too is when you get your report back, that's not how you will always be, right? Like so, for example, like you shouldn't just look at your stress and just say, well, I'm an Enneagram 6, so I'm just always going to be stressed out, right? No, what you're doing is you're learning how to navigate that. You're learning how to, I almost want to say correct it, but you're learning how to combat it and use it as an advantage to grow. And that's the real purpose of it, is not to identify your traits, but and just like let them be that way, but to identify the areas of your life that are hindering your growth. And then it's literally just kind of painting this picture for you of like, hey, here are areas for you to improve on. And I see a lot of people just kind of get stuck to the, I'm an Enneagram 7, so I'm always unorganized and I have no ability to focus on things or to see things all the way through. No.
Well, and once you realize that about yourself, you actually became extremely organized.
Yeah.
And
That's
so,
one of my becoming a more strength than it is a weakness.
right. And not just identifying that because, like, Enneagram sixes are typically like stress ridden and anxiety ridden and all this stuff. And I don't want that to be how I think about myself. I want to say, okay, well, maybe I'm more prone to do these things. And so, again, that's why one of the biggest lessons I've taken is it's really not as big of a deal as you think.
Yeah.
And it helps you grow and then you start to evolve. And I think the more you can just understand yourself, the happier you will be.
Yeah.
And it's been truly life changing. So
Yeah.
I love
Huge
how
fan.
this all kind of flowed together.
Yeah. Yeah. It was cool. I mean, it just like one thing kind of led to another, and it was all good topics.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, we always hope this is helpful. I know having these conversations, like, there's always different things we could continue to deep dive into, and there's a million different directions we can take it. But these are the conversations that we like to just sit down and have with our friends, that we sit down and have with each other all of the time.
yeah.
And
I think
it's
with
a lot
that,
of fun.
we,
Yeah.
we and that's a really big point of like why we like to do this, and we talked about doing this podcast style, because if we can help one person not make the mistakes that we did, then that's fulfilling. That's purpose for us. So that's this YouTube is really a lot about that for us. It's about giving back, sharing stories, and just hanging out, having fun with our friends and family, and just bringing us all together. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you guys so much that have been sharing and tagging us, and on Instagram, commenting on YouTube, like those, every single ounce of effort that you guys share, I promise you, like every time we see it,
We
like,
think it's so cool.
We'll send it to each other. We'll talk about it together. Like, it's so awesome to us. So we really, really do appreciate every bit of that you guys are doing to support us. And if you guys are watching and you're new to this and you want to support us, that's really the
best way.
biggest thing that we could
Yeah.
ask for is like every share that you give. Like, the way I look at it is like, if something in this video resonated with you, then think about one person in your life. Just shoot it their way. Shoot them a quick message and let them know, like, hey, watch this, thought it was helpful for me, and I want to share it with you. Like, little things like that are just, that's the best way to help us, and support us, is sharing with one person that you think could get some benefit out of it. So other than that, we're going to keep providing as much value, as much content as possible. And if there's anything that you guys want to see from us, we're always open to suggestions. So don't hesitate to drop in the comments too. And thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time.
We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
Nailed it.